And howdy again there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for tuning in on this pretty freaking awesome Friday, July the 20th. Tonight, we've got a pretty good show lined up for you guys. First, we got Solid MAGA with us. We've got
Punish Breadbox.
Solid MAGA, Punish Breadbox. Breadbox with us. We've got Political with us as well.
What up, what up?
And, do we have our guest, or
I think we might have a guest later in the show. We'll see.
Okay.
We got an interesting story that we're going to be ending on, and we may have a special guest to help us get through that.
All right. We'll see how that goes then. So, what do we got on the plate for us tonight, man?
Well, oh man, don't mind me, just coughing a lung up. Well, last week we didn't have a whole lot to talk about with Korea, but we're checking back in over there. We got a little bit with Iran. There's some interesting stuff going on in Israel. Follow up with Yemen, and then we're all about the Trump summit and some U.S. politics bullshit.
Sounds pretty good to me, man. I say let's go for it.
All right, let's get it started.
Right now, North Korea is illegally smuggling petroleum products into the country at a level that far exceeds the quotas established by the United Nations. These illegal ship-to-ship transfers are the most prominent means by which this is happening. These transfers happened at least 89 times in the first 5 months of this year, and they continue to occur. The United States reminds every UN member state of its responsibility to stop illegal ship-to-ship transfers, and we urge them to step up their enforcement efforts as well. We must also crack down on other forms of sanctions evasion, including the smuggling of coal by sea, smuggling by overland borders, and the presence of North Korean guest workers in certain countries. North Korean cyber thefts and other criminal activities are also generating significant revenues for the regime, and they must be stopped. President Trump remains upbeat about the prospects of denuclearization of North Korea. So do I, as progress is happening. It is the Trump administration's hope that one day the DPRK could be in our midst here at the United Nations, not as a pariah, but as a friend. Imagine UN Security Council meetings in which the DPRK nuclear and missile programs were not the agenda time and time again. We'll be able to focus our energy on so many urgent problems that face our world. I believe this reality is possible, and so does President Trump. But it will take full enforcement of sanctions for us to get there. It will also take Chairman Kim following through on his personal commitments that he made to President Trump in Singapore. The path ahead is not easy. It will take time, but our hopes for a safer world for all of us and a brighter future for North Korea remains our objective, and that hope endures. Thank you. Ambassador Haley?
Hey, pause that for a second. This is a really good time to pause that. So, you guys aware of what's been going on with North Korea this last week?
Not really. I haven't heard much at all.
So I actually didn't hear about this until actually this morning, because I just added a bunch of new bot features, and one of the features I added was an RSS feed.
Mm-hmm.
So I added a bunch of RSS feeds, and one of the headlines I came across was that China is doubling the oil and petroleum shipments to North Korea. So they're trying to skirt the North Korean sanctions. Basically what's going on is the U.S. is, on the one hand saying, hey, look, like we want to, help North Korea as much as the next guy, but there's a process. And then the UN, on the other hand, is going like, fuck you, we don't care, anything to spite you, we're going to approve of.
Well, that's just fucked.
So, yeah, well, the thing is like the UN is not, they're deciding to actively not enforce the sanctions.
So, like, basically California and border laws, all that shit.
Kind of. It's like as if, the Cuba, the Cuban embargo.
Yeah.
Okay, that's essentially a sanction that's been placed by one country without the approval of the UN, right? So the idea is that the UN is supposed to be the policing body for the sanction, and they're just not like policing. So the US has to, and then they get frowned upon. But there's not like anything anybody can do to us since we're the greatest military power in the world. Just saying.
All right, should we continue with this one?
Go for it.
Thank you so much, and I'm very grateful to my friend Secretary Pompeo for coming out and meeting with the Security Council today. This is what we know. 18 months ago when I came in, our biggest concern was North Korea. Everyone was wondering when that new test was going to happen. Everyone was wondering when the new threat would occur, and the entire international community knew something had to happen. It was a Herculean task by the Security Council to pass 3 massive sanctions packages, getting rid of all exports, 90% of their trade, 30% of their oil, expelling all labor workers and scheduling that down, making sure all joint ventures stopped. All of that, combined with the international community coming together and expelling diplomats and stopping communication, and with the president's tough stance, all of that was really the combination that brought North Korea to the table. Now, North Korea and the U.S. have started to have talks, and as those things are happening, we and the Security Council and the international community have to support those talks. And the best way we can support those talks is to not loosen the sanctions. And what we have been seeing is certain countries wanting to do waivers, certain countries saying let's lift sanctions, certain countries wanting to do more. And what I appreciate Secretary Pompeo coming up, and what we continue to reiterate is we can't do one thing until we see North Korea respond to their promise to denuclearize. We have to see some sort of action. And so until that action happens, the Security Council is going to hold tight. The international community, we ask you to hold tight as we go forward. The problem that we are encountering.
Okay, so pause this for a second.
Alrighty.
What have you seen a parallel to this in any other place in the world?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get at a little bit earlier.
Iran, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I mean, not
so
really, just having laws that you're not enforcing.
Right. They also have this thing where they made this fucking, perfunctory nuclear deal where it's kind of a lot of pretense and nothing's really actually happened yet as far as, nukes being moved. I mean, if we're fully honest. And at the same time, the rest of the countries in the world are trying to jeopardize the bargaining position of the country that's negotiating by undercutting their regulatory power. So what we're seeing here is all these countries want to make deals with North Korea on either the pretense of humanitarian aid or that they just don't care and they want to, make money. And in effect, it undercuts our bargaining position.
Indeed it does, and it also presents what I would imagine to be a grave security threat.
A huge one. Huge one.
All right, well, we got a little bit longer to go on this clip. Should we continue, or should we move on?
Honestly, this is all the news that we've got out of North Korea. They've pretty much said their piece. I think we can move on. What do you guys think? We got a lot of news to cover.
Yep, we do.
Yeah, bro. Good to go.
Okay, so this next guy, they're going to talk a little bit about the Europe and Iran relationship, there's a lot of things we've already heard in here, but we need to kind of touch on Iran because we haven't talked about them in a few weeks.
All right, let's touch base with Iran.
Well, since U.S. President Donald Trump reimposed sanctions on Iran, its future economic and diplomatic relationship with Europe has become uncertain. Well, in an exclusive interview with Euronews, the Iranian foreign minister said that Iran needs to hear less talk and have more action from Europe. Here's that report from Saeed Jafari.
We love you too, Sentient.
What we need from the Europeans is both the political commitment, which they have made. Now we need to see the measures in place on the ground, not simply in writing, not simply in words, in the banking sector, in the investment sector, in the energy sector, in the transportation sector, in the SME sector.
Well, our Paris correspondent Annelise Borges has got the European reaction on this view. Annelise, good to see you there. Now, European leaders, they were scrambling to save that Iran nuclear deal after Donald Trump, he effectively tore it to pieces. Where does that leave the relationship with Iran now, and what's at stake?
Well, as you said, Tessa, what Iran wants Europe to do is less talking and more action. And what the Iranian foreign minister was talking about was really translating Europe's commitments into action with regards to Iran. Of course, Europe has been Iran's most vocal ally with regards to that nuclear deal since the US's decision to pull out of it. The other signatories, including, of course, Germany, France, the UK, but also China and Russia, have vowed to stay in the deal. But, of course, what they haven't really come up with is a good reason for their companies to stick to Iran. Several companies are now very scared of those U.S. sanctions that are expected to be reinstated next month. And EU leaders have been scrambling to put together an economic plan to convince their companies to stay there, but including even Peugeot and Total have already cut back their investments in Iran for fear of compromising their business deals with the U.S. So what Iran is trying to say here is that, one, their patience is running thin, and they're urging Europe to step up to the task and exert all their power and influence in the Middle East and in other sectors as well. Take a listen to what the Iranian foreign minister had to say.
I believe generally Europe is underestimating its power and its influence. We believe that it should be more active in regional peace and security, in international peace and security, as well as in promoting greater cooperation and dialogue.
For several corporate leaders here in Europe, this nuclear deal is already dead, Tessa. But the reality is, it really is in life support at the moment. And now Iran is clearly urging European leaders to do more, and also with regards to the deal, but also with regards to other sectors in the Middle East and in the world to try and counter U.S. influence in several sectors.
Wow. Damn, that really complimented the previous clip, dude.
Yeah, right. So it's exactly the same situation.
Jesus
but it's in
Christ.
reverse, where they're locking down the borders, and everyone's doing everything they can to try to get their shekels out.
Which one of those guys is the guy that threw his shoe at Bush?
No, that was a reporter. Come on now.
No, bro, he just got elected for some office.
Oh my God, really? That's right. I forgot about that. Oh my God.
The way that he was just able to duck, and then he just gave that little classic George W. Bush smile just right after that, just like thinking, hey, wait, that was funny, but like totally not getting the cultural significance of it. That was
right.
Yeah. Anyway, that was off. That was completely and totally off topic. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. It's great. Okay, so that's, we touched base with Iran. Basically the same deal as North Korea, but a complete shit show. So
because people are not wanting to do business there now.
Well, no, that's just it, dude. Everyone wants to do business there, but because of the nuclear deal. Okay, so let me lay this out.
Because we pulled out of it.
Yeah, so the nuclear deal is now defunct. So since U.S. is re-enabling sanctions, it really cuts off a lot of people's revenue streams, and they're pissed off and freaking out. That's why Iran is making those saber-rattling moves of like, oh, we're going to start refining uranium. Okay, we're still not going to trade with you. Like, that's your problem, is that we're not trading with you, and that your populace is about to revolt and have a revolution.
It's just a matter of time.
It really is. It's going to be interesting to watch the Iranian Revolution here pretty soon. All right, so Israel has got an interesting thing going on. They just passed essentially a bill that makes them an ethno-state, and
oh boy,
they're getting some backlash for it. A little less than you'd think, and it's kind of shocking.
I kind of like how you had to clarify that. A little less than you think.
Right. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting was I thought it might be interesting to hear about it from the country's leader, Bibi Netanyahu. And I believe this is a clip of him actually signing the law.
All right, let's listen in.
בעד 62 نגד 55 נמנעו 2.
Heavy subtitles on this one. They're saying that it got approved after 3 votes. The law passed. And what we're seeing on the video is there's a lot of lawmakers that are ripping up their papers and throwing them on the floor. Benny says that this is a great achievement in the history of Zionism.
אחרי שהרצל פרסם את חזונו. קבענו בחוק
We have made in law the basic principle of our existence.
ישראל
Israel
היא מדינת
is the national
הלאום
state
של
of
העם
the Jewish
היהודי.
people.
מדינת לאום
A national state that responds to
שמכבדת
the
את
rights
זכויות
of
הפרט
individuals, the
של
rights
כל
of all of
אזרחיה.
its citizens.
ובמזרח התיכון
And in the Middle
רק
East, only
ישראל
Israel
מכבדת
respects these
זכויות אלה.
rights.
אני חוזר ואומר, זוהי
I
המדינה
repeat,
שלנו,
this is our state,
מדינת
the Jewish state.
היהודים. אבל בשנים
But
האחרונות
lately, there are people who are
יש מי
trying to
שמנסה
destabilize this
לערער על
state.
כך, ובכך
Therefore,
לערער
destabilize
את
the
יסודות
foundations of our
קיומנו
existence and our
וזכויותינו.
rights.
ובכן היום
So
חקקנו
today,
בסלע החוק,
we have made a law in stone.
זוהי המדינה שלנו, זוהי השפה
This is our
שלנו,
country. This
זהו
is our
ההמנון
language.
שלנו, וזהו הדגל
And this is
שלנו.
our anthem, and this is our
תחי
flag.
מדינת
Long live the
ישראל.
state of Israel. Now, what he's not really saying there, that he couched, is that he just made it an ethno-state.
Jesus. My.
Now, it's a little bit stronger than the Donald Trump rhetoric, right?
Yeah, that was
bro.
extremely stronger, way more stronger than that.
I mean, it's almost like reminiscent of like a Black Lives Matter parade or tiki torches in Kentucky, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit extreme, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, does it feel like the world is getting a little too preoccupied about race lately?
Yes. Very, very much. Way too much.
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously. Come on, guys. It's just color. Anyway, so, moving on to, I mean, I guess that's pretty serious news, but moving on to some other serious news coming out of Israel, they're actually launching wide-scale attacks against Gaza, or against Hamas in Gaza, and there's actually talk about another Palestinian war on the horizon.
Oh boy. Here we go again.
The Israeli military says it has begun a, quote, wide-scale attack against Hamas targets there. You're looking at video coming to us from Gaza. Israel says it is in response to a shooting attack on its soldiers at the border fence between Israel and Gaza today. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says Israeli soldiers shot 4 people dead during the weekly Friday protests. Let's bring in Ian Lee. He is reporting from Gaza. What's going on? Tell us what the Israeli military is doing this evening.
Well, Hala, we've seen a number of airstrikes more toward the central Gaza region this evening, and this is the wide-scale bombing campaign that Israel says they're undertaking after the events earlier today. And let's just back up and describe what happened. You had these protests, which have been happening every week, every Friday since March, where you have Gazans go to the fence and you have these protests that almost always turn deadly. Over
Friday?
140 Palestinians have been killed in these protests. But today there was an attack, the Israeli army says, on their soldiers with sniper fire, grenades, other explosives. What they called it is a very serious event, and it happened around 5 p.m. local time. And they say this is the reason why.
You know why it's happening around 5 p.m. local time?
Because that's when everybody gets off work.
That's because it's the beginning of the Sabbath.
Ooh. Ooh, I was way off.
Oh. Sometimes when you're a home podcaster, some interesting things happen when you're on the mic. My cat is trying to be a gymnast right next to me. All right, let's keep this going.
Why they are carrying out this wide-scale bombing campaign against Hamas targets. Now, they won't give us the details of what's happening. We do know that Israeli soldiers were targeted. We don't know at this moment if any were injured or what the status of them are. But we do know that Israel retaliated. You had these attacks by Israel. 3 of those people who were killed were members of Hamas's military wing, Qassam. The other person we're hearing is a civilian. But tonight, I got to tell you, Hala, it's pretty tense. Everyone we've been talking to, war is on their lips. Now, will this turn into one? That's what people are worried about. And we got this tweet from the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Nikolai Mladenov. He said, everyone in Gaza needs to step back from the brink, not next week, not tomorrow, right now. Those who want to provoke Palestinians and Israelis into another war must not succeed. So right now, I'm sure the UN as well as the Egyptians are trying to talk to both sides to try to bring everyone back from the brink. Hala.
I think that's about good right there.
All right.
So that's pretty much the situation that we've got going on in Israel. Is that there's propaganda on every side that's trying to push for war, and if they're not pushing for war, they're like, "Hey man, are they going to do it?
Are they
going to do it? Can I watch?
I think they're going to do it. I think it's going to happen.
Is it a dumpster fire?
Here it goes.
Is it a train wreck?
Train wreck with a garbage truck.
No joke, dude. But that's pretty much what's going on in that neck of the woods. All right, so moving on, we do have some dude. It's that whole neck of the woods is always screwed up, even though there's no woods there. Okay, so do you guys remember we've been keeping track of the war in Yemen?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so there has actually been some interesting trade back and forth between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. And it looks like some Yemeni forces actually attacked a Saudi Arabian refinery. Now, I believe these are Yemeni freedom fighters, which are the dissident forces, but I'm not 100% on that. So let's watch the clip and find out.
The Yemeni army, backed by Ansarullah fighters, has targeted
I
oil
remember
facilities
this guy.
run by the Saudi oil giant Aramco. According to Yemeni media, the country's air force used long-ranged unmanned aircraft to target the Aramco refinery in the capital, Riyadh. Aramco has confirmed a huge blaze, which it said began due to an operational incident. The Yemenis have repeatedly targeted Saudi military and oil facilities inside the kingdom in retaliation for attacks by the Saudi-led coalition. Earlier on Wednesday, Ansarullah fired a missile towards the southern city of Najran. Joining us live now from the Yemeni capital, Sana'a, is Hussein al-Bukhaiti, who is a political commentator.
Could be,
Hussein, as always, thanks for joining us.
worse.
What do you make of this attack on the Aramco refinery?
Oh, my cat wants to speak up.
I think Yemeni people has been waiting for this type of attack, and I have mentioned like many times before on your channel that we believe that the only thing that will stop the Saudi war in Yemen is to target the backbone of the Saudi economy, the backbone of its war campaign on Yemen. And I think targeting this oil refinery deep in Riyadh, we remember that the forest area that Yemeni missile unit has reached is Riyadh. And to have now a drone that could reach Riyadh, this means that the Yemeni army and Houthi Popular Committee and their drone unit are capable now of targeting every area in Saudi Arabia. And I think to target this refinery is a direct message to the Saudi saying that your oil field now is under, could be under the strike of Yemeni drones. If you will not stop this war, then we will continue to this type of target. And is really the name of this drone, they call it Samad 2. I don't remember that we have a drone that called Samad 1, but I think they have given this name Samad 2 is because the Saudi-led coalition has targeted and killed and assassinated the former head of political council in Sana'a, Mr. Saleh al-Samad, in last April. And to call his this plane after him, this means that Yemeni army and Houthi fighter and their missile unit, drone unit, are still will take revenge of Saudi of killing one of the top leader in Ansarullah Houthi movement.
And so, Hussein, what do you think will happen then in the coming days, especially considering now we have the Yemenis responding so strongly to the continuing Saudi aggression? Do you think that this makes the Saudis think again about their continuing aggression on the country?
We know that the Saudi and the war in Yemen and the Saudi leadership are really arrogant. So I think the first thing they will do is they will target civilians area. They will target Yemeni people because they couldn't actually stop Houthi fighter and Yemeni army from upgrading their weapons. But I think that this will make or force Yemeni army and Houthis to target the Saudi infrastructure, target the Saudi economy and the oil field, especially as I call it the backbone. And I believe that the United States could now start to think again because we know that Trump, he likes to have this Saudi oil for almost for free or for cheap price. So to threaten Aramco company, this means that Saudi Arabia will not be able to sell the company as they intended to, and this could actually make the price go very, very low if they really launch this company for private sector. So today, most of Yemenis are really, really happy with this attack on Saudi Arabia. And just before the announcement from Yemeni army that they have targeted the oil refinery, the Saudi has claimed that they have actually controlled a small fire in the same area, in the same refinery, and they show you that this drone has actually reached maybe 1,000 or more kilometers from Yemen, and I believe that now the United Arab Emirates will be the coming target and the next target, because the United Arab Emirates role in Yemen is as we call it in Yemen, is a dirty role. They try to separate Yemen. They haven't even secured the area they controlled. They use Al-Qaeda fighters, Salafi fighter, extremists to fight just to control the coast of Yemen.
Very well, Hussein, we'll leave there at that. But of course, as always, we appreciate you taking time out to speak to us here at Press TV.
So I think my prediction is pretty close to coming true. What do you think, boss?
That was a shit ton of information all at once, coming in just like a gigantic stream of consciousness from that guy.
Let's break it down for a second here. So first off, it was Yemen, the Yemeni government that was responsible for the attack. First off, they took responsibility for it. Actually, if you want to bring it up in the chat, I posted this. I think this is the only picture I was able to find of it on.
Of the drone.
Of the actual drone, yeah.
Got it up.
It's called the Samad 2 drone. It's apparently, like they say, it's a long-range drone. But it's a suicide drone. It's not meant for a return trip. So
it ain't coming back, Mom.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with these fucking Middle Eastern militaries and being involved with kamikaze units. It's just weird. Anyway, he's not wrong. Does have pretty long reach. It does make sense that they struck a Saudi Arabian oil facility, although they're going to start, getting ire from us pretty soon if they start doing that kind of crap.
Oh yeah.
Though, I mean, it's not like we didn't see it coming. The Saudis completely rejected the UN resolution that should have ended the war. What was that, like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago?
That was just last week, man, I think.
Well, they talked about it last week, but they had quietly dismissed the resolution, I think, the week prior, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think that sounds more about right.
Yeah, so this whole Yemen war thing has been going on for a while. We started it with, it got started over terror, then it grew into something that the Yemeni couldn't handle themselves. Saudi Arabia came in, and now they just won't leave. Sounds like about par for course. So how long before we get that guy on air saying that they're occupying his country?
I don't know. Are we starting to place bets? 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
Right.
Get a clip.
Oh well. Too bad things couldn't be better in the rest of the world, right?
Oh, if only. If only people were as nice to each other.
So we're moving on to our worldwide, Europe coverage of politics, and honestly, the biggest thing that's going on in Europe right now is Trump went over there to go talk to them, and everyone's freaking out. So I thought, just we don't have to play the whole clip. But I thought I'd grab a CNN scaremongering clip just to whet our appetite.
This is gonna be good, bro. I'm excited.
And here we go.
It's day 3 of the fallout from the Helsinki summit. The questions still keep coming about exactly what went on behind closed doors between Trump and Putin. Of course, one outcome we do know is that possible visit to Washington by the Russian president that we learned about today. But almost everything else, that's a mystery. As we showed you before the break, here's what former CIA Chief of Russia Operations Steve Hall.
I just want to say, just in case anybody forgets, that is Gloria Vanderbilt's son.
That is a CIA asset right there.
Yep. He was a CIA asset, once a CIA asset, always a CIA asset, and he's Gloria Vanderbilt's son. So he's heavily connected with the Rothschilds and all these elite families in America. So when you see him, this man is messaging to you propaganda.
Absolutely. But also, look at Putin, how he grabs that chair. He looks a little sweaty and uncomfortable. Trump's looks like he always does, just like, what's up, dude?
Good times. All right, let's
Posting
keep
yesterday
going.
on Twitter, he said, from a counterintelligence perspective, something is going on behind the scenes. Before Helsinki, I was less sure. Post Helsinki, I feel sick. Steve Hall joins me now, along with Rolf Moet Larsen, like Steve, a former CIA officer who also spent a good deal of time in Moscow.
Man,
Steve,
the CIA
you choose your words
asset?
carefully.
Oh,
What
man.
makes you feel sick?
All of them.
Before the Helsinki summit, I was not prepared to go to the darkest corner in the room and say, there is compromising information on Donald Trump. But then after I saw him together with Vladimir Putin, the murderer, the person who has done, the standard litany of things that we're now all familiar with, and I saw Donald Trump treat him in a fashion that is just inexplicable.
Okay, pause this for a second. That was quick. Okay, so what did he just do? He comes in here and he goes, Donald Trump bad for this reason. Putin bad for this reason. Donald Trump even badder because Donald Trump liked Putin. And this is why Donald Trump liked Putin.
Ooga booga.
Did you guys see that clip of Obama telling that bro that he'll have more options once the election's over?
Yeah, the hot mic clip. We'll talk about that after this clip.
That's
the conclusion
good shit,
that I can come to is, and I would disagree with one of your former guests, I think there is information and data out there that implies that there is indeed compromising information that Vladimir Putin has on Donald Trump. Look, why else would he treat him this way? Donald Trump has been pretty tough with the Chinese. There's an impending trade war. He's been pretty tough with Rocket Man when they were comparing the size of their buttons. So it's not as though Donald Trump has any problem being tough with people.
So you know what he's talking about? So he just, like I said, he set this up. Donald Trump bad, Putin bad. Donald Trump treating Putin good means that Donald Trump even worse. Oh, Donald Trump treating Putin good must mean that Putin has something on Donald Trump. Pissgate. This is about Pissgate.
Oh.
This is about the Pissgate dossier. He doesn't want to say it because it got discredited, but this is what they're doing. They're trying to come up and dredge up feelings of the Pissgate dossier.
Is it too
because
they use a string of mountains of lies that they build. They shovel a pile full of dirt, that's one lie. They shovel another fucking pile of dirt, another fucking lie. They just build this mountain of shit.
That's the problem. Just stop lying. Just stop.
It's not a direct lie. This is not a direct lie. Like, this is literally just implication. Like, he's just saying, well, if he's meeting with Putin and Putin's a bad guy and he's treating him so good, maybe Putin has something over on it.
But it's the
and
implication.
That evokes the feeling of the Pissgate folder. Just saying. Which, by the way, came from our friends over at 4chan.
Thank you,
Right, that's my favorite part of the entire thing, is that it's a 4chan LARP.
So good.
All
right, let's continue with the outrage.
The question is, why not be tough with a guy like Vladimir Putin? And the only explanation that I can have is that he is concerned that the compromising information that Putin has on him will get out, because everybody else he treats very, very differently. That's kind of what sickens me.
Rolf, do you have that sense of sickness as well?
Rolf?
I would say that I agree with Steve's description of the symptoms, but I'm not sure I understand the cause. In other words,
it's
I'm not
called Trump
prepared to go
derangement
there
syndrome,
in terms of
bro.
saying
That's
that
what
the
it's called,
president
the
is
sickness.
influenced directly by any
Well, he's down
compromising
with it.
material the Russians have. But what I would add to Steve's commentary is that in a way it doesn't matter. The fact is that we cannot proceed with any realistic expectation that we can improve relations with the Russians if the president is not prepared to take a hard line with Vladimir Putin.
All right, pause
his
that.
entire
Okay, so we can kill that clip at this point. And that's a perfect point to talk about what you were talking about, political. I should have grabbed the video for this podcast, but when Obama was going for his second term, he got caught on a hot mic with a Russian ambassador making the statement, look, if you ease up on me now, I can have a little bit more flexibility after the election.
Absolutely, look it up, people.
If Donald Trump said that right now, they would burn him at the stake.
For sure. And it's, yep.
So, just keep that in mind. Just is what it is as we go into the next clip. Because I believe, if I remember how I did these clips, which who fucking knows?
You should have your show notes open, bro.
Right? The next clip should be a nice little summary of some events like that in the past. Russian leaders meeting with U.S. leaders and how those interactions went. It's a neat little visit down memory lane and comparing Trump's interactions with the actions of our previous presidents. I think that's Mark Levin.
Let's go on down memory lane then.
All right, he's back with us. He's the host of CRTV's Levin TV, the host of Life, Liberty, Levin, the number one show Sunday nights, 10 Eastern, right here on Fox. I call him the great one, Mark Levin. So I said at the beginning of the show, we have now witnessed the single worst 24 hours in the history of the mainstream media, which is saying a lot because we know how corrupt they are. Reaction.
Oh, burn.
Well, Sean, what we've learned about the media, several of the hosts and guests, is we have a lot of psychopaths out there, that's for sure.
Okay, how do you really feel?
Comparing the president's conference with Putin to Pearl Harbor, 9/11, Kristallnacht, the beginning of the Holocaust, calling him a traitor and treasonous. 2 weeks ago, they said he was running Japanese internment camps and Nazi concentration camps. This is the pseudo-media. And now it comes to Russia. Now the liberals, the media, the Democrats, some Republicans, very upset about Russia. They've had more positions on Russia than Stormy Daniels, as far as I'm concerned. Let me point out some history. This is very, very important.
That's a good line.
That was good.
John McCain, gross. God bless him, and others have said that what Trump did at that press conference is the worst interaction we've ever had with Russia, the worst diplomatic disaster ever. I want the American people, forget about the media, I want you to know something. In 1945, at the Yalta Conference, Franklin Roosevelt sold out half of Europe to Stalin. He repeatedly praised Stalin. Franklin Roosevelt is the hero of the Democrat Party. He of Japanese internment camps, too. In Yalta, he gave up half of Europe to the Soviet Union. In 1961, JFK met with Khrushchev. JFK told a friend of his that he was rolled over, that he came across weak, that it was pretty disastrous, his meeting with Khrushchev. And a few weeks later, what do? The Soviets are shipping missiles to Cuba, and they're building a wall in Berlin. In 1975, Gerald Ford in Helsinki with Brezhnev, 35 other countries, recognized the territorial sovereignty of the Soviet Union, which included the captive nations of Eastern Europe. In 1979, Jimmy Carter placed a big wet kiss on Brezhnev's cheek in Vienna. All this hysteria about this press conference. The president said, look, I could have said it better. I should have said this. And they act like it's the apocalypse. It's not. The left in this country has defended the Rosenbergs. They defended Alger Hiss. They defended Ted Kennedy in 1983 and 4 when he was colluding with the Kremlin to defeat Reagan. The left, the Democrats, the media in this country opposed SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which had as its purpose to defend us against Russian nuclear missiles. They called it Star Wars. To this day,
Star Wars.
The left won't fund it. To this day, the Democrat Party opposes it. They opposed his Pershing II missiles to modernize medium-range nuclear missiles, which he eventually put in Europe, again to defeat the Soviet Union. So the left goes back and forth, the Democrats. If, in fact, Donald Trump had turned to Putin after a 2-hour private meeting, after setting up this summit, and all of a sudden in public turns to Putin and says, look, you little bastard, we know you interfered in our election, they would be attacking Trump today. The way that Trump turned to the Germans and NATO and said, hey,
good point.
You're buying 70% of your natural gas from the Ruskies, you're funding their war machine, and then you ask us to subsidize you? The media and the Democrats and the same
and they
people went
shit on
nuts.
him for it.
But some more facts. Obama's president. Obama did nothing effective at all to stop the Russians' interference in our election. He's the one who ought to be under investigation. No pushback for the invasion of Georgia. No pushback for the annexation of Crimea. No pushback for the invasion of eastern Ukraine. No pushback from Russia's criminal shootdown of flight MH17. He capitulated to Russia in Syria. The unmet red lines, his betrayal of Poland and the Czech Republic.
So many
by
red
acceding to
lines.
Russia's demand to remove U.S. missile defense systems there.
I know, it's
He
almost like
betrayed
they're written
the
in
Ukraine
sand
by
or
refusing
something.
to provide them with defensive weapons. Now,
yeah, well, what
contrast
about this
that
one?
disaster,
This one.
that utter appeasement, to what Trump has done in 18 months. He's expanded sanctions on Russian companies and apparatchiks. He's expanded and beefed up NATO. He's had a massive increase in U.S. defense spending, no thanks to the liberals, restoring missile defenses to Poland and the Czech Republic, returning heavy armored divisions to Germany, pre-positioning armed brigades in the Baltics, ending arms embargoes on Ukraine and Georgia that Obama imposed on victims of Russian aggression, ending the ban of oil exports to try and compete with the Russians when it comes to their oil. And I could go on and on and on this. These are notes I had typed out on this. So all this hysteria, the fact of the matter is Trump hasn't done a thing to harm America with respect to Russia, and Obama did nothing to protect America when it came to Russia. The same attitude Obama had when it came to the Chinese in the South China Sea building their phony islands, the North Koreans as they're building their nukes, the Iranians, he gave them $150 billion and a wet kiss on the lips. So the attacks on Trump, this overwrought, hysterical, insane attack by the media, the Democrats, some in the Republican Party, and some phony conservatives. It's okay.
Let me ask you this.
You're allowed to question a president. Just don't go nuts.
No, they can't help themselves because their narrative. Look, you can't see this without seeing it through the prism of 2018. It's now because they can't run on the economy anymore. They're telling Maxine and others to be quiet about impeaching. They want open borders. They want Obamacare. They want their crumbs back. And now they're kind of desperate because the Mueller investigation hasn't brought them what they wanted in 18 months. But we have had Russia collusion, and as much as Russian lies were paid for and disseminated to the American people about Donald Trump in a presidential election, and they were used to get a warrant in a presidential election against the Trump campaign. That seems to me like a pretty important factor that they don't report on, Mark.
How else can you
describe it? Two entities interfered in our election, the Russians and the Obama administration. The Democrats defend the Obama administration, and all of a sudden they don't like the Russians, who they've been kowtowing to since 1917.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what? That's why we call you the Great One. We will see Mark on Sunday night. Life, Liberty, Levin, 10 p.m.
All right.
Okay.
I thought that was a pretty good summary of our relations with Russia and how the Democratic Party has pretty much,
yeah, I learned
flip-flopped the entire way around.
I learned a lot from that today, guys.
Yeah, a lot more coming too. All right, so where are we at here?
Something about strongman politics, I think.
Well, first, this is going to be fun because we got that clip that got submitted by Swiss Bro.
Oh, right.
I am because we are. So while we were watching this other clip, we actually pulled the clip of Obama with his hot mic. So let's go ahead and watch this so we have a little bit of context, and then we can see Obama trying to still, have influence in the political sphere.
I am ready.
This is my last space for you. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility.
Oh.
Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and
understand. All right, man. Let's get these mics back on.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's right there for everyone to see. After my election, I will have more flexibility.
Oh my God. There we go.
Fucking. Yeah. This is the guy. I want you guys to understand. This is the guy that's got a FISA scandal. Okay, this is the guy. This guy, the guy that can't even, keep foreign policy under wraps, and decides to say things like this in a room full of microphones.
Jackass.
Like, seriously, how can you not think that that's not going to happen?
Exactly. All right, let's move on to the next clip.
All right.
Which is Obama trying to, swing his influence around.
But given the strange and uncertain times that we are in, and they are strange.
There's that flexibility.
And they are uncertain.
This just happened a couple days ago.
Each day's news cycles bringing more head spinning and disturbing headlines.
Oh no, Obama's upset. Oh no. The world's going crazy because world peace is happening.
Burn the Constitution.
Try to get some perspective. It is in part because of the failures of governments, powerful elites, squarely address the shortcomings and contradictions of
Hey guys, I'm one of you.
That we now see much of the world threatening to return to an older, more dangerous, more brutal.
Hey guys, if you guys go back to the old way of doing things, that's dangerous. People are going to die. Always have to do the new thing. Fads are important.
Began to appear. That kind of politics is now on the move.
You guys ever heard of this thing called the New World Order?
I'm simply stating facts. Strongman politics are ascendant suddenly. But those in
do
power
not
seek
argue
to
from points of
undermine
strength.
Every institution
You will make your
or
enemies
norm
have to
that gives
capitulate.
democracy meaning.
And that's
I believe in
bad
Nelson
for
Mandela's
my
vision.
legacy.
I believe in a vision shared by Gandhi and King, Abraham Lincoln.
I believe in a vision that I was not strong enough to pursue.
Freedom and multiracial democracy built on the premise that all people are created equal and they're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights.
Sir, the Muslim Brotherhood would like to speak with you.
I'm ad-libbing here. That these people who are so intent on putting people down and puffing themselves up that they're small-hearted.
Oh,
There's,
they're just mean. That's why they say these things. Come on.
They're just
something
mean.
They're just afraid of.
Afraid of change.
Unto others, we'd have them do unto us. And it is a truth that is incompatible with
Kind of makes you wonder how much you got paid to do this speech, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Religion or gender or sexual orientation. And it is a truth that, by the way, when embraced, actually delivers practical benefits. And if you doubt that, just ask the French
Actually
football
delivers
team that just won
practical
the World
benefits.
Cup. You have to believe in facts. If I say this is a podium and you say this
Yeah,
is
science
an
is real, guys.
it's going to be hard for us to cooperate. Unfortunately, too much of politics today seems to reject the very concept
Yep.
of objective truth. We
John of
see
Arc has it right.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
100% the king of doublespeak.
political leaders
Jesus
where
Christ.
they're caught in a lie and they just double down and they lie some more. We have to follow Adiba's example of persistence, of hope.
Hashtag resist.
Hashtag resist.
Jiminy Christmas. Oh god, that was too much.
Stay woke. Sounds like that I wish the bot was in here so we could just like play it. All right. Right. Moving on. So now we're pretty much done with the Trump-Putin summit. I heard we're gonna have some lighthearted news here for a second. I heard a big sports ball thing happened recently. Did you hear about the sports ball thing?
I did hear about the sports ball thing.
Let's-
There was the world
Let's play the sports ball thing.
playing the sports ball thing, boss.
Holy crap! I thought you said that French people surrender. That doesn't look like a retreat to me.
Nope.
So this is the reaction when the French win the World Cup. The dude's face. You guys ever been in a Super Bowl riot? Nope. It looks a lot like this.
Okay, whoa. That was
All right,
a lot
that's
of
like
noise.
the loudest clip of all time.
It was like
But,
Vuvuzella's out the butt.
Yeah, have you ever seen that many people packed in one spot aside from Mecca?
Well, yeah. I mean,
It's crazy.
What's that got to do with things?
I don't know. I just thought it was funny. Okay, so we got one more piece of European news that I thought was something we've talked about in the past.
News.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I'm not going to be peeing. I'm trying to be, civilized. So,
Nice.
if you pull up the next clip, it should be about the ongoing situation with Italy and taking in migrants.
Oh.
There's a lot of pushback on that from Italy.
Oh yeah, I was wanting to see how that was going.
I'm trying to keep tabs on it, so let's go ahead and watch this. This should be a new clip about the issue.
Thanks for doing that for me. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you bet.
After just 2 weeks in power, Italy's new governing parties are sticking to their campaign promises. The Interior Minister's closed a port to a vessel carrying
That's
migrants.
so revolutionary.
He says the country's new goal is to protect its borders.
I want to put an end to this human trafficking, which puts thousands of lives at risk. So, in the same way that we raised the issue for the Aquarius, we will raise it for all other vessels that follow.
Pause that.
They're able to make it about human trafficking.
It is about human trafficking.
It is.
Oh man.
Yes.
Okay. Most people don't understand this. Let's get into this discussion, okay? Because what he is trying to fight is he's trying to fight the non-governmental organizations that, under the pretense of rescuing migrants from the Mediterranean Sea, go over to the north of Africa, off the coast in international waters. They weigh anchor, and they basically sit there and wait for migrants to make their way out to the boat. What they are doing is literally trafficking humans into Europe on the pretense of rescuing people. These people are not, it's not like they fell off a goddamn boat. It's not like they're being thrown in the ocean. These people are literally being told, if you get to the boat, they will take you to a land of paradise where you will be given free money, free food, free shelter, and there's women, and there's, plenty for everyone. And that's what they do. They sit there, and then they have the one group that thinks, oh, I'm leaving something shitty for something free and better. And then there's another group that's saying, oh, well, we're going to bring these people in on the pretense of rescuing them, when really we're being funded by political pundits and shakers and movers like George Soros.
And they're moving people.
I mean, the thing that's really amazing to me is that a world leader is willing to come out and say it.
Let's continue this.
Other countries, I'm hinting at France, where instead of accepting, they repel the migrants. Our objective is, we hope the same one as in Austria, to protect the external borders of Europe, and Italy is one of them.
The humanitarian vessel that was turned away was carrying more than 600...
Hey, whoa, that's a friggin' Higgins boat from World War II. That's what they used for the D-Day landings. Is that what happened to all the military surplus from back then?
That's actually really interesting. I never actually thought about that, but that's really...
Sorry,
that's it.
Just a
no, you got me thinking, like, that's pretty insidious, right? Like, get an NGO out there in the middle of the ocean, load up assault craft, essentially, with migrants, like...
Literal assault craft.
If we were to go by the Obama optics ruler, I think we would be measuring somewhere around the, is this an invasion or not, Because, I mean, the image of assault craft headed to Europe filled with men that, have maybe not so good intentions reminds me of D-Day a little bit. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and the fact that it's the same
Where are the
boat.
women?
Oh, there are women?
I don't see
I
any
said,
there.
where are the women?
There are women?
Where are they?
Yeah, there are women?
Maybe there are some more further down in the clip.
No, let's keep it going.
100 migrants, including more than 100 unaccompanied minors and pregnant women. However, it was offered to dock in a Spanish port instead. Now, those on board had been rescued off the coast of Libya over the weekend and were hoping to disembark in the Italian island of Sicily. We asked organisations dealing with the humanitarian crisis about the issues currently facing Europe. They told us that more needs to be done for understanding and responsibility to take the initiative.
We have 629 people on board who have faced a very extreme situation, who have faced abuse, who have been rescued at sea.
Boat.
Some people we had to really drag out of the water And we're now telling these people that they're going to have to sail for another several days in order to reach safety. Malta and Italy were the closest places of safe places of disembarkation. It is absolutely ridiculous that we are now in a position where we have to sail for more than 1,000 nautical miles to try to reach Spain. All this to try to address the failures of the asylum systems in Europe. Italy is a frontline country that has had to welcome a huge number of migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, but the responsibility is that of all EU member states.
Well, I think under the law of the sea, there's an obligation for states to cooperate and to bring people to the nearest shore. But in this particular case, you have different predetermined areas of responsibility. So there's a bit of a dispute over which particular country is responsible. And I think they're working that out, because now that Spain has offered to take the migrants, some of them have been taken off the vessel, the Aquarius, and put onto an Italian vessel because they were picked up by Italian ships. So I think they're working through the law. And if I understand correctly, the effort really is to be more aligned with the actual law of the sea, so that the burden is shared more equitably among the frontline states, which are Spain, Italy, Cyprus, Malta, and Greece, which are taking the overwhelming number of migrants coming in. So it's fairly understandable, I would think, in any system, that if there's a large body of people coming through who are in a irregular situation and that the courts aren't able to keep up. So frustrations are pretty normal.
You know, it's kind of interesting that's the situation like where those people are coming in the most at, because both Italy and Spain have had recent independence referendums, and Greece is a subject of austerity, and they want to go through independence from the EU as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you wonder, maybe these things are not just correlated. Maybe there's some causation there.
Should I break out the tinfoil?
No, not yet. Stay back till the end of the episode. We might need that at the end.
Okay.
According to NBC, of course.
All right, I'm putting it away. Back to the
All right, so let's move on to the rest of the world. I think we've pretty much covered what's going on in Italy. There's an interesting analyst. There's an interesting analysis of China's economy that I found kind of interesting. I never really thought of their economy as fragile, but this guy seems to be there.
Let's learn something.
Joining me right now, the author of The Coming Collapse of China, Mr. Gordon Zhang. Gordon, collapse of China, I don't know. I mean, they're on a trajectory right now where if we don't actually assert ourselves, I worry we're going to be looking at an economic collapse, not them.
You know, you're absolutely right, Trish. We increasingly have an innovation-based economy. The Chinese have been stealing U.S. intellectual property to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars a year. There are forced transfers of technology that violate their World Trade Organization obligations. We've got to deal with this. And as you pointed out earlier, we've got a strong economy right now. The Chinese economy actually is quite fragile. The currency is in a swoon. This is a time for the United States to defend its workers, its businesses, and its future.
I'd hate to think of the United States having seen its heyday and then lost it to a country like China. I mean, one of my concerns always has been if we don't actually safeguard what we have and continue to grow and invest in our industries, if we turn it all over to the likes of China, then they're on a path to becoming the next USA, and we're heading straight towards, I don't know what, France.
Yeah, we do not want to become a country.
Socialism.
Oh, yeah,
and they'll be the big capitalist society that, isn't a democracy, but has control of the world's purse strings.
Yes, and when you talked about the Made in China 2025 program, they want to dominate those 10, now 11 critical sectors. This really is the future of the global economy, and the United States needs to be there, because this is just where the U.S. has grown so much in recent years. And China, through this Made in China 2025 program, which is a World Trade Organization violation from top to bottom. So, clearly the Chinese think that they can do it. They've gotten away with it in the previous 3 administrations.
What was that?
Made in China by 2025. I'm not familiar with that.
Neither am I.
Hooray for the Trump administration saying, look, we're not going to take this anymore. This will hurt us, and we got to be very clear about that. But we've got to accept this pain now while we can, because if we don't, this is going to be a country without an economy that we can be proud of.
We're making such a big deal out of China. There are those that wanted TPP back in the day, Hillary Clinton being one, because the thinking was that if enough countries could join forces with us, that we could therefore put pressure on China. Do we need to be examining some kind of TPP
Remember when we got told that?
2.0? Maybe we can call it something different. That might help, Gordon?
I think it would from a number. No, we can go it alone, because the thing that made TPP so attractive to the 11 other countries was the access to the U.S. market. But I would prefer to go it with 11 partners, because this has geostrategic implications as well. China is challenging the United States, not just from an economic point of view, but it's also from trying to take territory from our friends and allies. It's challenging the U.S. in the global commons. And, we defend freedom of navigation. That's been the one consistent American foreign policy over the course of more than 200 years. So these are things that we have disagreements with China, which they're zero sum. We cannot allow them to prevail on these.
All right, Gordon Chang, thank you very much. Always good to hear your perspective.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thanks, Gordon. Redbox, you there?
Yes. Yep.
I don't know. I'm just used to you just popping back in as soon as the clip ends and going like, well, here's some clever, perfect well put together analysis. So I don't know. I just got caught off guard there.
I always come up with that on the fly.
Really?
Every time.
Damn, man. What kind of brain is in your head there, man? I gotta give a hold of one of those.
Every time. It's just off the cuff.
Yeah, you must be taking
I get that brain farce.
You got the brain force, the anthroplex.
Oh my god, gotta get my bone broth. Got the bone broth. All right, so we talked last week about Peter Strzok and everything. Before we get into the little bit on Lisa Page that we have this week, since they did their closed hearing and not an open hearing, I thought it might be cathartic to watch a highlight reel from the Peter Strzok.
Let's get into the catharsis.
I don't give a damn what you appreciate, Agent Strzok. I don't appreciate having an FBI agent with an unprecedented level of animus working on 2 major investigations during 2016. Fire.
You want me to read this?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. OMG, he's an idiot.
May 4th, 2016.
Now the pressure really starts to finish MYE.
On August 26, 2016, you texted Ms. Page, quote, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. What does Trump support smell like, Mr. Strzok?
Sir, that's a expression.
It smells like
freedom
that black ice air freshener that you find in used cars. That's what it smells like.
Expression of speech. I clearly wasn't smelling one thing or the other. Mr. Gowdy, as I've stated, that text was written late at night in shorthand.
I don't care when it was written. I don't care whether it was longhand, cursive. I don't care about any of that. I want to know what it meant, Agent Strzok.
It would be his candidacy for the presidency, and my sense that the American population, the FBI received documents and material from Mr. Orr.
Did you? I appreciate that. I appreciate that, but you did not from Mr. Orr.
No.
Okay, but the FBI did get documents from Bruce Orr.
Yes, sir.
Did they get the dossier from Bruce Orr?
My direction from the FBI, as I may tell you, the FBI received material from Mr. Orr.
Now, this is I could tell you. If you were kicked off when he read the text, shouldn't you have been kicked off when you wrote it?
We just talked about.
Not at all.
Well,
it wasn't the discovery.
Still what?
They just asked him about the Pissgate dossier, which is what we just talked about that earlier, didn't we? Because CNN's still running with it.
Sure, I don't need the tinfoil just yet.
No, dude, that falls under hashtag fake news.
That's right.
Of your text, Mr. Strzok, it was the existence of your bias that got you kicked off.
No, Mr. Gowdy, it wasn't. I do not have bias. My personal opinions in no way.
Well, then why did you get kicked off? Why did you get kicked off?
I thought that was a pretty good clip. Just saying. I came up and it was too good to let go. So, Daryl Issa has a few choice words to share about the Lisa Page hearing, if you guys are interested.
Oh, I am definitely interested. Let's pull this up, Moo.
We're coming back to you live from Helsinki, Finland, late at night, sun rising anyway. Of course, this was the site of the Vladimir Putin-Donald Trump summit earlier today, just finished. Back in Washington, meanwhile, former FBI agent Lisa Page returned to Capitol Hill. She has appeared to 2 House committees behind closed doors to deliver further testimony about her behavior at the FBI over the last couple of years.
She's a nasty woman.
Peter Strzok routinely sent highly
Peter Strzok
political messages to one another. In one case, promising to derail the Trump campaign. Congressman Daryl Issa represents the state of California. He sits on the House Judiciary Committee. He heard Page's testimony today, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thank you very much for coming on. So what can you tell us about what Lisa Page said?
Well, first of all, I was surprised how smart she is and how poised she is. She is one smart attorney. And I say that not in any way except to say she was much better witness for her own purposes. Very careful, very poised. Mm-hmm. What we did see, though, is
makes you wonder if she cooperated.
And I can't speak to the questions and answers, as you can understand, but she would look over and put her hand out for the FBI lawyer there to object anytime she saw an opening for that objection. She was literally prompting for those. And I found that to be pretty reprehensible. She no longer works for them, and it's not her job to determine those so-called equities that are being invented by the FBI as some sort of a privilege.
Now,
Brad Box
most
told
of us
me he
have
thinks she's
seen
sexy.
a partial transcript of her text exchanges with
that true,
her
Brad?
wonderful boyfriend. And so we have a pretty clear picture of her political views and the intensity of those
if I didn't
views.
have to be picky.
Give us a picture of her involvement in the Russia investigation. How close to the center of that was she? How influential was she? How meaningful was her participation?
Well, this is something that she said in general, she said constantly, which is she kept wanting to reduce her importance. She went on at length about how many people changed between investigations and how there were too many other people for her, per se, to have had an influence. But let's remember, Peter Strzok looked at us and said he didn't have a bias, he didn't do anything, but he had no answer for why it was his computer that downgraded Hillary Clinton's misuse from a crime to a non-crime. Literally, that
we
report
literally
was
know
changed
which
on his
computer changed it.
So they were critical. They teamed up together, and there really wasn't an answer to that in any of her testimony. Only an obfuscation of her importance.
Remarkable. Thank you very much, Congressman, for coming on and giving us that window into it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Yeah, I always like Daryl Issa. He's a pretty good straight shooter.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was straightforward and straight shot.
I swear he told.
Let's see here.
But what we did find out from that is that we know that it came from his computer.
Have you paid respects to my dignity yet?
Partially.
I just meant over the Lisa Page comment. Bot Chan's calling for respects. You better press F.
I don't see it, bro.
It's because I put it in the wrong person. All right, so let me look at. So we're pretty much done with the Lisa Page stuff. There's not much going on with the Trump, investigation as far as like the Russia. But the reason for that is because we're all waiting for the results of the Lisa Page hearing. And everyone's waiting with bated breath to see whether or not we're actually going to get a real hearing. So why don't we go ahead and jump in on the actual Trump and Putin summit? And we're going to take a different route with this. Trump did some interviews, so we're going to watch some Trump interviews. And then once Trump is done talking, we're going to hear from Secretary Mattis.
All right.
Mr. President, great to see you.
Thank you very much.
You literally just finished the press conference with President Putin moments ago.
With Hannity.
A lot came up. You were very strong at the end of that press conference. You said, where are the servers? What about what Peter Strzok said? Where are the 33,000 emails? And there was this mystery answer that I think surprised a lot of people by the president of Russia as it relates to the Mueller investigation.
That's right. Well, first of all, he said there was no collusion whatsoever. I guess he said as strongly as you can say it, they have no information on Trump. It was an interesting statement, too. You know, many years ago when I was there, what was it, 13, 14, a long time ago, he said there were many, many business people there. In all fairness, I was a very successful businessman, but I was one of a lot of people. And one thing you know, if they had it, it would have been out.
He said it was nonsense.
He said it's nonsense, is right. And he also said there's absolutely no collusion, which you know, and everybody that watches your show knows. And I think most of the country knows. And Tucker, standing right over there, definitely knows because he gets it. He's one of the people that get it. But I'll tell you that I thought it was a really amazing time. Not about that. I think it's a shame. We're talking about nuclear proliferation. We're talking about Syria and humanitarian aid. We're talking about all of these different things, and we get questions on the witch hunt. And I don't think the people out in the country buy it, but the reporters like to give it a shot. I thought that President Putin was very, very strong.
Let's talk about how the day went. You actually used the term 4 hours ago that changed, talking about the relationship. Was it that quickly and that profound?
We had a very long meeting, and it was a good meeting. We discussed so many different things, including nuclear, including war and peace, including economic, Syria, Ukraine. We discussed many, many things. And at the end of a long period of time, I mean, it was really a long, it was just the two of us and interpreters. And
Have
at
you
the end
noticed
of
Steve
this
stopped
meeting,
repeating
I
his
think
main
we
points
really
in
came to a lot
speeches
of
and interviews?
Kind of.
good conclusions. A really good conclusion for Israel. Something very strong. He's a believer in Israel. He's a fan of Bibi, and really helping him a lot, and will help him a lot, which is good for all of us.
Let's talk about specifics that you went over as it relates to both Syria, which he has been a supporter of the Assad regime, and of course Iran, which is the #1 state sponsor of terror, fomenting proxy wars.
Right. Well, I think on Syria we're getting very close. I think it's becoming a humanitarian situation, and a lot of people are going to move back to Syria from Turkey and from Jordan and from different places. They're going to move back, less so from Europe, but they will be moving back from lots of different places. So I really think we're not very far apart on Syria. I do think that on Iran, he probably would have liked to keep the deal in place because that's good for Russia. You know, they do business with, it's good for a lot of the countries that do business with Iran, but it's not good for this country, and it's ultimately not good for the world. And if you look at what's happening, Iran is falling apart. They have riots in all their cities. The inflation is rampant and going through the roof. And not that you want to hurt anybody, but that regime, we would let the people know that we are behind them 100%. But they're having big protests all over the country, probably as big as they've ever had before.
I love it.
It really is.
I love
since
that. Just the way that
terminated that deal. So we'll see.
Oh, the lower third?
Yeah.
Can you partner with Russia to perhaps stop the fomenting of terror, stop the proxy wars? Was that discussed?
Well, it was, and I think that would be a great thing if we could do it. Then you have some people that say, oh, you'd have to do, get involved with Russia. But if we can stop killing all over the place or terrorism, we discussed radical Islamic terror at great length because they have the problem too. Yeah, we discussed ISIS, and as you know, we've pretty much eradicated ISIS in the Middle East. And we've done a very strong job. He acknowledged that. But we discussed ISIS and the threat of ISIS and basically the threat of terrorism.
Let me go to the issue of nuclear proliferation. 2021, the START Treaty would need to be extended, and also the INF as it relates to, and he did bring up the idea of missile defense. Were those issues discussed, and did you make any progress?
Well, I think we're at the very beginning. It's a very important issues. To me, the most important issue is the nuclear issue, because I know President Obama said global warming is our biggest problem, and I would say that no, it's nuclear warming is our biggest problem by a factor of about 5 million.
Nuclear winter, I think is the word he was looking
the
for.
Nuclear problem, we have to make sure, we have to be very careful. And, if you look at Russia and the United States, that's 90% of the nuclear weapons. And if we start doing something and working on other countries, and he also said he wants to be very helpful with North Korea. We're doing well with North Korea. We have time. There's no rush. It's been going on for many years. But we're doing very well. As you know, we got our hostages back. There's been no testing. There's been no nuclear explosions, which we would know in about, immediately. There's been no rockets going over Japan, no missiles going over Japan. And that's now been 9 months. And the relationship is very good. You saw the nice letter he wrote. And so I think a lot of good things are happening. But President Putin is very much into making that all happen.
A lot of people in the lead up to this, obviously, you met with our NATO allies.
Yes.
And America pays 70 cents of every dollar. And a lot of people have not lived up to their commitment as it relates to that. And also, interestingly, because a big part of NATO's mission is to prevent any hostility from Russia. And yet Angela Merkel's willing to import billions of dollars worth of their energy up to 70%, which I would argue would make them vulnerable. And
she's paying Russia billions of dollars. Now, that's her choice. I mean, if she's going to do it, but it's a little tough when you're in NATO and you do that. I will say that I was amazed at the media because, honestly, I was there for a day and a half, and it started right when I got there, and I was very respectful, but I told people it's unfair. The United States could be paying for 91%, okay? Could be. So the minimum is 70%, but it's probably 91%. So we're paying for 91% of the cost of keeping Europe safe. On top of that, the European Union takes total advantage of us with tariffs and with trade barriers. But they kill us on trade. We lost $151 billion last year. So they beat us on trade, and we defend them for essentially nothing. And I said, it's not going to be that way anymore. You got to pay up. You got to pay more.
Secretary General gave you the credit.
He gave me all of the credit. Last year, they raised $44 billion more, only because more additional. And he said it was only because of President Trump. So I figured I'd wake up the next day and read these wonderful stories. And by the way, I got along great.
Did you really believe that the media would do that?
I actually thought, finally, I'm going to have a great story. Okay, foreign relations. I'm going to have a great story. And instead of saying that I raised 44 billion, not million, 44 billion last year for NATO, I raised, could be over $100 billion this year and into the future. They said that I treated the heads of other nations rough. And I didn't. I actually have great relationships with them.
Man, it's almost like having friends, with your rivals is not that bad of an idea.
Yeah, kind of seems like a good thing that, we shouldn't be all up in arms about. Trying to be friends with people, being friendly and stuff.
We can't do things that make sense.
Then the Russians win.
Then Russia wins.
Trump wins, and if Trump wins, then Russia wins, and if Russia wins, then Trump wins, and we can't let anybody happen to win.
Then we're all gonna hang.
All the wins, no wins. Okay, so
I don't believe in a no-win scenario.
I'm still trying to get a hold of our guest. I think our guest. I will be honest. Our potential guest has a busted foot, so he might not be able to make it, and it's really late in his time zone.
True.
So.
True.
We may go on talking about stuff with that, but we'll see.
All right.
We'll just hold off on it for a little bit. All right. So we do have another Trump interview, and I know, we are politically biased. We do like Trump over here. Blah 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 blah. But I understand this is a lot of Trump this week. But it's a big Trump week, so deal with it. Sorry.
Yeah, deal with it. I was just about to say. What's wrong with that?
Yep. So Tucker Tuckerson got a chance to sink his meat hooks into Trump too, not in the dirty way.
Yes, Blondie, we have a special guest.
I hope we have a special guest. We'll see.
Hopefully, let's see.
We'll see. Fingers crossed.
But for now, Tuckerson.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, we just landed from Helsinki, back in the nation's capital, where it is hot and intense. We're going to have our full extended interview with the president from Helsinki. We're going to show that to you in just a minute. We asked him, of course, about Russia, but there are, believe it or not, many more important and pressing issues on the world stage, not just Russia. And we asked the president about those as well. We'll bring the whole thing to you coming up in just a second. But first, tonight, with remarkable speed and intensity, the media, the foreign policy establishment, both political parties, have come together as one to attack the president for his meeting yesterday with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. Anderson Cooper, John McCain, Mitt Romney, they all described the president's remarks about Russia as disgraceful. Former CI Director John Brennan called those remarks treasonous and grounds for impeachment. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer announced that Trump was being blackmailed by a foreign power. Others accused him of being a sleeper agent, a spy. One member of Congress from Tennessee called for a military coup against the presidency.
What?
Well, as the rage storm swirled, the president bowed to the inevitable, genuflecting before U.S. intelligence agencies whose judgment must never be questioned, and recited the now obligatory oath of loyalty to the spy bureaucrats now in charge of our country. Watch.
In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia. So, just to repeat it, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. And the sentence should have been, and I thought it would be maybe a little bit unclear on the transcript or unclear on the actual video. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. Sort of a double negative. So you can put that in, and I think that probably clarifies things pretty good by itself.
So that's the hostage tape. The president buckled to criticism. I don't know what they're saying. That's exactly what happened. He buckled. And that happens. This is politics, after all. What is amazing and unusual and ominous is who made him buckle. The people yelling the loudest about how the Russians are our greatest enemy and Trump is their puppet happen to be the very same people who have been mismanaging our foreign policy for the past 2 decades. The people who invaded Iraq and wouldn't admit it was a mistake. People who killed Muammar Gaddafi for no obvious reason and prolonged the horrible Syrian civil war and then threw open the borders of Europe. The ones still defending the pointless Afghan conflict and even now planning brand new disasters around the world in Lebanon, Iran, and yes, in Russia. These are the people who've made America weaker and poorer and sadder. The group whose failures got Trump elected in the first place. You would think by this late date they would be discredited completely and unemployable, wearing uniforms and picking up trash by the side of a turnpike somewhere.
Holy shit.
But no, they're not. They're hosting cable news shows. They're holding high positions of influence at the State Department. They run virtually every nonprofit public policy institution in Washington. They are still, in some sense, in charge of our national conversation. And naturally, they hate the idea of rethinking or correcting any of the countless blunders they have made over the years. And that's one of the main reasons they hate Trump.
Why do that?
He calls them on those blunders.
Exactly.
Now, being Trump, he can't always explain precisely what he means to say. Sometimes he gets the details wrong, or he gets sidetracked with some personal vendetta, as if anybody cares about that ridiculous Jim Acosta guy. Nobody does. But on the big questions, Trump is indisputably right. The Cold War is over. The world has changed. It is time to rethink America's alliances and to act in our own interest for once. Russia is not a close friend of the United States. But the question is, why should we consider Russia a mortal enemy? Of course, Russia spies on us. So do a lot of countries, some of them far more effectively than Russia. The Russian attempt to meddle in our election was comically amateurish. Badly targeted Facebook ads almost nobody saw. Compare that effort to the deep penetration of American industry and the defense sector by the Communist government of China. Or compare it to the remarkable sway that the Sunni Gulf states have over our political process, or the fact that Latin American countries are changing election outcomes here by forcing demographic change on this country at a rate that American voters consistently say they don't want. Those are all major challenges.
A lot of big words for
saying
to
our American
illegal
democracy.
immigrants
They're real.
being able to vote.
And yet somehow nobody on cable news seems upset about any of it. Why is that? Well, here's one reason. Many in Washington are getting rich from the Chinese and the Saudis. Latin Americans clean their homes and watch their kids. Those countries can't be our enemies, in their view. But nobody here is getting rich from Russia, so therefore Putin must be a mortal foe. That's what the neocons are telling us we are required to believe. Does anyone actually believe it? Well, no sober person who's read a newspaper this year could recite that talking point without laughing, because it's stupid. So the only option, if you want to force the population to accept something ridiculous, is to make sure they don't think too much about it, that they're quiet, they do what they're told. And if you don't believe it, watch what's happening to Trump right now. Obviously, it's possible, entirely possible, maybe likely that the Russian government broke into the DNC servers before the last election. It certainly sounds like something they might do. But before we act like we know for a fact that that's what happened and go to war with Russia over that, Shouldn't we see some actual evidence that it happened? Why not? Like maybe a server, or at least a clear explanation of what happened. We haven't seen that. And that's what Trump asked for. How dare he? That's a treasonous thought, we were told. He's a quisling, a traitor to his country. That's what they're saying. And not just a few of them.
Traitor because he wants evidence to go to war.
Think for a second about what they are demanding. If you don't automatically accept the imprecise, non-specific, never fully explained findings of shadowy intelligence agencies with long, documented track records of making serious mistakes, you've somehow betrayed your country. The very people who assured you that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, the ones who said the Shah would never fall in Iran, etc., those people must be believed without question or else. On television, this group is called the intelligence community. That's an Orwellian name if there ever was one. Where exactly is this community we hear so much about? Does it have a zip code? A public library system? A youth football league? How long before Congress starts demanding unthinking obedience to the lawmaker community? It's a community, after all. You must obey it. Dissent is unpatriotic. And if you don't agree, you're working for Vladimir Putin. That's where we're heading, by the way, and fast. In some ways, this whole story is about Donald Trump and what he's said and what he does. But on a deeper level, it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. This is about democracy, whether or not voters rule their country. It turns out the very people telling you they are saving our democracy are working overtime to destroy it and scolding you as they do.
Damn fine points right there, man. Damn fine points.
That's why I have a lot of respect for Tucker. He goes right for the throat, and he doesn't fucking mince words.
I'm getting your point there, man, with that. Good job. Good job. Good shot.
Yeah, good. We need more reporters on both sides that are like Tucker. I'd like to see some left-leaning reporters that have his prowess when it comes to journalism. That'd be pretty cool to see, to be honest. Okay, so let's see here. Next one is our clip with Jim Mattis, and he's got a few words to say about the Russia situation. I believe he's talking to the Daily Mail.
Russia factors in the southeastern Europe area.
Look at that face.
As a destabilizing element. They have chosen to come in and to undermine the democratic fabric of nations that are young in their democratic processes, that have been freed as nations.
He's talking about places like Iraq and Iran.
Whether through
Afghanistan
false
and
news
whatnot.
reporting, economic strictures, and interventions, they are not seen as helpful, would be probably the most polite way to describe it.
Yeah, that's a very polite way to put it.
Yeah, I would say so. It's pretty apt, too. Okay, so for our next segment, I don't think our special guest is going to make it. I think he's asleep, honestly. I've been trying to get in touch with him, and I think, I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. But, I mean, it is like 1 o'clock his time, so that's completely understandable. That being said, there's an interesting development that's been happening in MSM. There's been a story that we've been kind of watching on the back end. It's actually something that kind of brought us all together and made us interested in doing this podcast. But it hasn't actually broken into MSM, so we've never brought it up on the show. So go ahead and play the first clip, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about the topic.
Is this the part where I can bring it out?
Yeah. Go ahead and start working on your hat. You're gonna need to protect yourself soon.
Dude, fuck yes.
Alongside Angry Birds and Words with Friends is a controversial and popular conspiracy theory app called Q-Drops. It takes false online conspiracies like Pizzagate even further. The Q-Drops app pushes bogus theories called QAnon.
What's dangerous about this app is that it amplifies a theory that alleges that the Democratic Party is engaged in child murder and sex rings of children.
Celebrities like Roseanne and Kurt Schilling have shared and supported Q conspiracies on social media.
Now, if you believe that, abortion is murder, then yes, they do. Number two, aren't they when they bring illegal aliens over and then elect them to public office? aren't they encouraging human trafficking?
Yes, they are. Indeed, they are. They're just
now on top of that. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that there's been a lot of Democratic, politicians that have been involved in human trafficking, as well as some on the Republican side. Not to mention, people worldwide. Weren't we just talking last week about Saudi Arabia and Prince Al-Walid?
Yes, we were.
And how his wife had talked about how he was brought like young boys and stuff like that had been trafficked to their country.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, well, this is all part of that. This, these children are usually given up as like luxury items to elites and high-powered politicians the world over.
And you got to keep that in mind. That's the whole point of that as you watch these clips.
Yeah, the way they couch this is really dangerous too. Oh, there's the Alex Jones. Let's go.
There we go.
Well as Sean Hannity and Alex Jones. Q Drops recently peaked at number 10 in the paid app section of Apple's App Store, number 1 in the entertainment section. Apple and Google have taken cuts of the profits.
Damn.
This spread of falsehoods is dangerous for public safety.
Apple CEO Tim Cook has repeatedly said his company prides itself on reviewing each app, saying back in April, in the aftermath of Facebook's Cambridge Analytica data scandal,
"We don't subscribe to the view that you have to let everybody in that wants to, or if you don't believe in free speech."
It's very
right. We don't believe that.
But in this case, controversial Q Drops was let in. When NBC News approached Apple to ask about Q Drops, it removed the app from the App Store, telling us we will take swift action to remove any apps that violate our guidelines or the law. We take this responsibility very seriously.
How did it violate the guidelines or the law is the question, though.
They actually do go on to say, and it's complete censorship.
But Q Drops still appears in the Google Play Store. Amazon sells QAnon merchandise. Both companies declined to comment. The husband and wife team that created Q Drops and gets the biggest cut of the profits from its sales has not responded either. But after Apple dropped their app, they tweeted they're working with Apple to alleviate any concerns they may have so we can be put back on the store.
Before you believe anything, just give one thought to who might be making money off the information that you're being given, off of the melodrama that you're being fed.
But the information's free.
There's money behind this.
Jolene Kent, NBC News.
Hey, NBC. All right, so that was a whole lot of fear-mongering, yeah?
Yeah, that was nothing but fear-mongering. It didn't tell you a single thing what it was about. It just said, oh, Pizzagate, and so you gotta be afraid of this. You gotta be scared, guys.
I mean, getting into Pizzagate, that's always something that's a little bit dangerous. A lot of people get censored for it on YouTube. Hell, our video might even get pulled down just for us mentioning.
Yeah, just for saying the words. Thanks.
Right, but I mean, the whole reason that Pizzagate blew up was because of that guy that went to Comet Ping Pong with the assault rifle.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk about things that you can't go look up and find news articles on. That just seems a little bit silly. We can't talk about stuff that's just, wishy-washy. What we can do is we can look at the facts. The facts are that this is kind of a bit of a phenomenon that's been growing on the internet since I think it was November.
Yep, just about November. So,
and it's pretty much taken over the hashtags on Twitter. Like it's amazing how fast it's grown. We have people like Roseanne Barr that are tweeting about it. Even some silly internet celebrities like Jenna Jameson. James Woods has tweeted that he's waiting to see about the whole Q thing. Jack Sobek was tweeting that he doesn't believe in Q. From across the spectrum, we're seeing people finally acknowledge it and see. I mean, even the vaunted alt-right journalist Mike Cernovich, the one that I think is a complete hack, has come out and asked his followers, "Hey, what do you guys think about this whole thing?" So it's getting traction. The gist of it is that there is an individual that claims to be a White House insider, an intelligence insider that is dropping what he calls the greatest intelligence leak of all time onto internet image board. And we're not going to talk about the image board and link it here because that's a faux pas. You can find all the information you want either on our website, irc.qclearancearchive.net, or just search hashtag QAnon. It'll all come up.
You'll find it.
Yep. If you can find it, enjoy yourself. But we got to respect the internet culture.
Indeed, we do. That's an important part of all this too, as well as respecting that culture that already exists.
Guys, this is a public safety concern. What do you not get? Putting out information is bad for you.
Oh no, I forgot about that. Let me go put my head in the sand. I forgot that it was Ostrich Day.
Still got my tinfoil.
You never even had to get out your tinfoil, bro.
It's right here. What do you mean? It's right here.
I don't think you need it.
Fine. Just wasted a perfectly good fedora.
So
you make fedoras out of tinfoil?
Yeah,
that's the plan.
That's the plan. Trust the plan, man.
So there's been a lot of interesting correlations with the information that this individual that calls himself Q has put out, and some of the things that have happened in the real world. And I don't know if you guys remember the "He Will Not Divide Us" stunt that was pulled off by 4chan last 2 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
In 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for our users that don't remember this, the "He Will Not Divide Us" stunt was Shia LaBeouf's act of resist in Trump. So he put up a big webcam on art museum in New York, and it had a microphone on it. It just said above it, "He will not divide us." And people just started showing up. It was the greatest live TV of all time. It was the greatest reality TV of all time. And even people like Steven Crowder came out to do a full podcast on the actual feed. It was hilarious.
It was the definition of triggered.
There were so many people that dressed up like CIA and Bane.
It was the most wonderful thing that had happened on the internet all year. And when it ended, what Shia LaBeouf did, just because he got butthurt and arrested a few times and all these other things, the museum didn't want to have it anymore because it was becoming a big problem. They had to have security all the time. Like, it was bad. He made a flag and he put it in an undisclosed location on a flagpole. And within, I think it was 36 hours, somebody from 4chan working with a bunch of nameless, anonymous people managed to find it and replace it with a Trump hat and a Pepe shirt.
Best ever.
Greatest thing of all time. Now, that being said, these people are the ones that are working on these QAnon drops. And as far-fetched as some of this stuff seems to the layman, a lot of it makes a lot of sense, and it seems to correlate a lot. Some of the things that Q talks about are predictions. Some of them are things that we already know about, like Project Mockingbird and MK Ultra research and stuff like that. Other things are more subtle, like the political situation in the world and what's going on behind the scenes in the White House. And if he's right, a lot of the things we're seeing in the public, just scratch the surface of what's actually going on. And we could be in for a really rude awakening and political upset down the road. Now that we've kind of preloaded you guys with all that information, I guess we should talk about the actual Q Drops app. Do you guys know anything about this app? Because I do.
I honestly didn't even know it existed until that video right there.
I actually know someone that was asked to work on it, and I recommended that they not work on it.
Well,
and the reason that I asked them not to work on it was because this app tends to, they charge money for it, and it seems like everyone that gets into this whole Q community that charges money for anything they do, there's a lot of backlash associated with that since it's a grassroots movement, and a lot of people are pretty upset that people are trying to make money off the back of something that they think is altruistic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, is a valid point. I mean, if this is... I mean... But, of course, with anything, you're going to have people that are going to try to make money off of it.
Absolutely. So I think it's time to go into the next clip, and we'll see what they talk about and move on from there.
All right, now to an NBC News exclusive. Apple and Google have vowed to fight fake news and conspiracy theories, but they're also profiting from it. The tech giants sold an app in their stores called Q-Drops. Now, this is important. Q-Drops is linked to the conspiracy theory chain QAnon, which is described as an offshoot of the Pizzagate fiction.
So in case nobody is really, latching onto this, they're trying to say that by collecting monetary, value, by getting value from this, by getting monetary profit from this item, that means that you endorse it. That's what they're trying to get at. So since you endorse it, then if it's horrible in our eyes and we can get outraged enough, then we can shame you into getting rid of it.
Well, if you wear a Che Guevara shirt, I mean.
Right. So regardless of whether or not you believe in QAnon or anything like that, this is ridiculous censorship.
Claimed that Hillary Clinton ran a child sex trafficking ring out of a basement of a Washington, D.C. pizza shop that didn't even have a basement. The app alerts fans and followers when there are new posts. This is the last post from July 4th. Many of the nearly 1,700 posts, by the way, which fans call breadcrumbs, are vague, making it tough to nail down an exact storyline. But the central theme here is that Hillary Clinton and many of the world's other politicians and celebrities are members of a murderous child sex ring.
Pause that for a
President
second.
Trump is.
All right. Let's just say something right now. That man right there up in the upper right-hand corner, John Podesta, go look at his art and tell me that he isn't deranged.
Absolutely. The stuff that came out in the WikiLeaks also is very, very questionable, to say the least.
There's some pretty crazy WikiLeaks emails about pizza and hot dog parties where they're charging a ton of money for food and it's way overcharging. And we already know, according to the ADL and the FBI, that these are terms that are used for child sex trafficking. It's kind of jarring and shocking, and the problem is they use such terms that are so general that you can't really nail it down.
Almost impossible. It's like they're trying to hide themselves.
I'm doing a damn good job of it too. Now, that's not to say that we're sitting here saying that we have concrete evidence that like Obama or Hillary or sex traffickers or anything. No, but we will say this: there are some interesting implications from her involvement in Haiti, and it's really interesting how she pardoned someone that was convicted of human trafficking in Haiti, or rather arranged for her to be have her case dismissed, and then installed her as the head of the Amber Alert agency. I mean, there are some interesting facts.
Ever.
Let's continue on.
Well, I should mention, if you want to learn about all this stuff and you want to know the details and you're not sure where to start, you're not sure to begin, go to the website, irc.qclearancearchive.net, and check out I Am Because We Are's QAnon map. That thing is probably the best resource for you to get involved and read about it.
That would be a good place to start. Yes.
Absolutely. He's been involved from the beginning.
Secretly created a police force, by the way, to arrest them and force them to wear ankle bracelets. There are people who actually believe this stuff. It sounds wild, but it actually has thousands of followers who have spread the QAnon theory to the rest of the world using Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other social media sites and message boards. So what does all of this have to do?
They just said in the last clip that this thing reached the top of the entertainment category on the Apple App Store.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's the 10th most downloaded app on the Apple Store. So,
wow.
For him to sit there and say, can you believe it? There are people that actually believe this stuff?
That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. He's basically trying to shame people into not looking at it.
But
this is definitely not a small thing. It's a lot of people involved in this operation here.
Yep. All right, let's get going.
With Apple and Google? Well, the companies made money when somebody bought the Q-Drops app in the app stores. It's still for sale in the Google Play Store, and Google has not responded to an NBC News request for comment. Apple did remove the app after an inquiry from NBC News. The company said in a statement, the App Store has always supported all points of view being represented, as long as the apps are respectful to users with differing opinions and the quality of the experience is great. All right, we're going to take, the Apple also said, we'll take swift action to remove any app that violates our guidelines or the law. The people behind Q Drops tweeted that they are working with Apple to get it back in the App Store. Joining us now to take a closer look at this is the guy who's been working on this, Ben Collins, NBC News reporter. He helped break this exclusive story. So the issue here, we know there's garbage on the internet.
Right.
We'd like to think that the people from whom we buy the apps, and I know they all take a view that it's all First Amendment and free speech and all that, but they do have some guidelines.
Right, and Apple has explicitly come out and said in the past, listen, this is, they said this is like minding a store that we have this app store, and, the stuff on it is, it's our responsibility to see what's on there. And if people are on there saying, Hillary Clinton, they by the way, this is way off the map stuff. They think that they're using baby blood to mix it into cement, totally crazy stuff.
Yeah,
that's actually not something that's mentioned in the Q Drops is baby blood and cement. That's a little bit of that's a fabrication. This guy is just saying that to sensationalize it. There are some really interesting and rather macabre things that they do say about human byproduct in the Q Drops, but that one's patently wrong. He made that up.
Taking a cut of this.
Yeah,
So we're taking
people have pushed that, but it's not from Q.
30% cuts of this app. So they took it down immediately. Google still hasn't done so, and all this stuff lingers on Facebook, Twitter, all of these places.
Right. So it comes out.
Notice how they got
Google
like eating or getting eaten by Apple, like fucking Pac-Man.
Put it out there in the internet, and these companies, Apple and Google Google now, they're making money off of this.
It's 99 cents per purchase, and they take a cut out of this stuff. So I mean, it's different if it's Facebook saying, hey, listen, it's simply too big to manage. We don't know what we're doing here. With these app stores, these are moderated by human beings.
Right. What is
okay? Hold on, pause that. Did you just hear what he said?
These are moderated by human beings.
No. Back up a little bit further. Oh, it's okay for Facebook to say that they can't moderate their own service because it's just too big for anyone to be reliably expected to moderate. But Google, they should have to fucking moderate their service. This is just an outrage because I disagree with it.
Nail on the head.
That's simply fake news.
Response to how they fight this conspiracy theory nonsense.
Sure. I mean, it starts with human moderation, and that's what you see as well with these hearings in the last couple of days. You see this idea that there's some sort of censorship on Facebook. In truth, if anything, it's probably the opposite. There's not a lot going on there in terms of actually taking this stuff down. Right now, Sandy Hook conspiracy theories still linger on Facebook.
Brought out the Sandy Hook, not even related.
Because there's no place to moderate it.
And this came up in the hearings, right? I mean, this comes up in the European Union, but it comes up here in Congress where members of Congress are asking these companies, like, what's your rule when it comes to conspiracy theories? How do these things continue to exist? They all say that they're taking efforts, in particular Facebook and Twitter say they're making efforts to get this garbage off.
How can I isolate it and discredit it and disregard it?
I don't know. If I knew that, I'd tell you.
That is exactly what he's getting after right now.
The internet, but some of it still lingers.
Ali, I've been covering this for many years now, and I can tell you it's pretty much no better than it was a few years ago. And it's in part because these companies just refuse to use humans to fix technical problems.
Yeah, but you talk about Sandy Hook, right? InfoWars.
Exactly.
Alex Jones has been perpetuating these myths about Sandy Hook being a hoax and things like this. You can still find that.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere. In fact, like we were talking today to a mother of a Sandy Hook victim who said, there's been a little bit of change recently, but it's still there. And they have not talked to Facebook. Like, Facebook has not reached out to these people. They've reached out to all these conservative groups. They've reached out to Congress. They've been proactive in talking to people.
Okay, so what he's saying is that
the people
the
who are really
families from Sandy Hook want
their lives
Facebook to censor Sandy Hook deniers. And he's outraged that Facebook would dare to not censor people on those grounds, which I'm actually shocked that they're not.
It's all about censorship, man. It's just all censorship.
Well, and stealing your data.
That too, of course.
Mm-hmm.
A kid. And then they have to go and they have to deal with these people saying the kid never really existed.
So what's the answer, Ben? Human intervention? Is that the idea, that until we can get the algorithms working properly, or can the algorithms actually work properly to determine what's a lie and what's a conspiracy theory and get it off?
Right, it's a combo. And the other thing is, I get the idea that you don't want to take down people's opinions. That's crazy. That's a nutty thing to do. But there are things that are just hard and fast facts that we know about. There are Pizzagate conspiracy theories, straight up Pizzagate conspiracy theories on Facebook right now. And we know that's not true. We know
there's no basement in this place that's supposed to have a...
So you can't talk about it,
right?
This is exactly what we're talking about.
That's not...
He just wants an army of censors that have Snopes open. The fact-checking website ran by the guy who ran away with a escort and left his wife with his kids. That they want to trust that guy over their own discernment. This is the problem with modern day MSM right here in a damn nutshell. They want to tell you what to believe. They want to tell you you're stupid if you don't believe what they tell you to believe. They want to tell you that it's patently false if you don't believe what they tell you to believe. And then on top of that, they just want to they want to like shame you for having any kind of discernment whatsoever. It's like the destruction of the American ability to discern the truth.
The freedom to think.
I mean, do you remember what was that clip from Morning Joe when Mika was like, "It's our job to tell you what to think"?
Yep.
God, so fucking hilarious.
This is exactly it. That guy's face. All right, let's finish this clip.
It's illegal to look up the WikiLeaks.
Zuckerberg brings up the fact that, there are Holocaust denial things on Facebook and says, it's not really his place to say whether or not this happened. Well, the Holocaust happened.
Right.
And at some point, somebody, a human being at an executive level, has to say, we're going to dedicate human man hours to this. And they just haven't done as much as they possibly could.
Okay, we're going to have an army of people going through each one of these Holocaust-denying groups and telling them all that the Holocaust happened.
I think it's really funny that he used the Holocaust as grounds for establishing an American branch of the Stasi.
Yeah, bro. They do that all the time.
You like that, boss?
I like that.
You like that correlation?
I like that correlation a lot.
All right, so that is, that's pretty much our show right there, man.
Whew. Yeah.
Pretty big one, huh? I never thought we'd actually be talking about QAnon on the podcast, to be quite frank. We'll talk about it again if it comes up in the mainstream. We'll keep an eye out for it. But, man, I was kind of shocked that it actually showed up in mainstream. I kind of expected it, but I didn't think that it was going to be like that.
Just kind of out there. Just not something that couldn't just see it coming.
It's definitely not the first time it's been brought up on cable. They had that Comedy Central thing with Jordan Klepper, where they were making fun of QAnon people like they believed in the Matrix and that, they all wear trench coats and the stupid thing. It was pretty funny.
That's awesome. Try sound effect always helps.
Oh, that's gonna be a new emoji.
I have a closet full of trench coats, by the way. So just throwing that out there.
I can handle that.
Do you want to see my QAnon posts?
Okay. Well, so do we have anything else that we got to go on?
That's it, man. You go ahead and take us out.
This was a good one tonight, folks. I'd say it was good. Was it good, Bread Box?
I think it's pretty good.
Was it good?
I think we're finally starting to hit our groove.
Yeah, I think we got this. What do you think, Political?
Yeah, that was fun, dude. That was good shit.
Yeah, all right. Sad we couldn't have our special guest join us, but maybe next time. Oh, well. As always, want to thank everybody out there who taking the time to, watch us every Friday or so and engage with us in the chat and all that stuff. Everybody on the Discord, everybody that's helped put this together, everybody who's a part of the community. I want to thank you all. I want to thank I Am Because We Are for, again, like Breadbox said earlier, bringing all this community together. And without all that, this wouldn't be happening. So, yep, it's good. It's all good. Hope everybody had an awesome week. Hope everybody has an awesome weekend ahead of them. And y'all be safe out there. Y'all be good. And, of course, buy water.
Don't do it.